Hey, welcome to Wednesday Live. I promised you last week that Bob would begin this week talking about some practical steps to transformation. And I was mistaken because Bob is on vacation this week. So here I am. And pray for Bob that as he's taking a little trip by himself and spending some time in solitude and seeking to be present to the Lord, that God would speak to him and bless him and encourage him. So transformation is what we've been talking about, and we've talked about the 4 steps of transformation, which are awareness, ownership, courageous perseverance, and risking taking action. And what we want to share with you now is just some practical steps of ways that we might welcome transformation. And the reality is, God's going to do it regardless. He is about the business. His nature is, by the nature of his love, he's going to transform us. That's the effect of love. Love has a transforming presence, and certainly God is present to us. We may block it at times, right? Our false selves may get in the way, but God is present to us. Christ lives within us. And by the very nature of that, we're going to be transformed by his love. Now, we may resist it. We may fight it, but the reality is Philippians 1:6, he says, I will complete, or Paul says this, he will complete the work that he began in you. And I just want to think that, I'm aware of times in my life when I have resisted. I've gone my own way, God's over here, and I'm running fast this way. But what I want us to think about is, what if we cooperate with him? Or the Bible uses this term, let me get churchy on you. This is just biblical. Repentance, which means just turning to him, kind of like you would in relationship with somebody. You can have your back to them, or you can say, no, I'm going to turn to you because I want to know what you have for me, and I want to do relationship with you. And so that's just cooperating with him and welcoming the conversation, welcoming his transforming love. And so let me just talk about a practical way that we might welcome or cooperate with his transforming love. One way is this, prayer. Now, some of you may be saying, wait a minute, is prayer practical? Because I've spent a lot of time on my couch, in my prayer chamber, wherever, talking to God, and I don't feel like that's really practical. And I don't feel like I get anything out of it. But I want to suggest to you it is practical. And I want to give you 3 ways that you can pray that I think are really practical. One is this, pray always. Now you might say, how in the world can I pray always? Well, that's one of the encouragements that Paul gives us in 1 Thessalonians 5:7, I think it is, or maybe 5:17, 5:7 or 5:17. You can check me on that. But Paul says, pray without ceasing. And that's always been a fascinating verse to me. I'm like, how do you pray without ceasing? Are you on your knees doing this all day long and you never get anything done? Well, here's how I think we do that. We don't have to hole up and never stop. But to realize this, that prayer, let me give you another word for prayer, conversation. What if prayer is simply conversation with God, who is always present to us, and by his Spirit he is within us? So we can be in constant conversation with the God who is constantly and always present to us. So we can have that constant conversation. And I would just encourage you, it may be better than doing what I do, which is sometimes I'm talking to myself, to just realize, oh yeah, God's there. And so as I'm walking, as I'm sitting, as I'm even doing my work and my mind is going on other things, it can be like, oh God, I know you're there. And just having a conversation with him as we go about our day-to-day activities. The second thing about prayer I want to suggest to you is this. Make a conscious effort to speak or to have a conversation of gratitude with God. Tell him about what you're grateful for. I'm aware of this, that gratitude or thankfulness is a posture for me that really invites love, and it also makes it difficult to hold bitterness, anger, and discontentment. So I know, like, even with people, if I'm, in a relationship with somebody and there's something I'm not quite content with in that relationship, which, let's be honest, there's probably many a relationship like that we're not just totally satisfied in that relationship. But if I think about that person, I think, okay, what can I be grateful about in that person? How can I be thankful for this relationship? What's good there? It kind of melts whatever the distance and the divide is. And so I want to just encourage that with God, and open yourself up to beginning some of the conversations with him with gratitude and thankfulness, and see if that doesn't maybe loosen some of the holds that some bitterness, some anger, some discontentment have in your heart. So first, pray without ceasing. Know that he's always there. He's always open to the conversation. Secondly, insert some thankfulness, some gratitude into the conversation. And then thirdly, let me suggest to you that you speak the prayer of King David to God. Now, this is really getting into transformation, because David in Psalm 139, so it's a prayer that comes in Psalm 139, and it's a beautiful psalm that I just love ruminating on. There's so much good in it that reminds us, this isn't the prayer part, but it reminds us that we're made by God. He says, before there was any of your days, I knit you together in your mother's womb, and I ordained all your days before there was any one of them. It's like he knows everything about us anyway. He's there. He's in the game with us. But David ends the psalm in verse 23 and 24 this way. He says, God, search me and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. And I wonder, if you read the psalm, I wonder if you won't get the flavor that I get from it, which is David kind of saying, I think you know me better than I know myself, God. Which, isn't that true? We know things that we've made better than the thing knows itself. And we're not a thing, we're a living creature that God has made. But isn't it cool to think that the God who made us knows us better than we know ourselves, and he can reveal over time things about us to us? And so David says, hey, search me and show me. Help me to know what's going on inside of me. And then he says in verse 24, he says, see if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the path of everlasting life. I just think that's so brave of King David to say, show me what's, just out of sync within me. Show me what might be offensive to my neighbor, to my spouse, to people that are important to me, to the world. And David says, just show me. I think this is David saying, I'm open, God, to your transforming love. I'm open to you revealing. And David has to trust this. I mean, David had the chinks in his armor, right? I think David's just opening up and saying, I'm trusting you, God, by your love and your mercy, because you're a merciful God, to just work with me in a way that will change me for good. Don't you want to be changed for good? And the more we welcome God's presence within us, we know this, that the psalmist says in Psalm 16:11, in the presence of the Lord is joy everlasting. And so this is just an opportunity. Prayer, conversation with the Father is a way to open ourselves up, not only to his transforming love, but to being more present to him and full of his joy. So take that on as a practical step for the steps of transformation and some practical things you can do. And I hope in doing so it blesses you. And we'll be back next week. One of us, I don't know, I'll see if I can get Bob to come off a vacation and do this. He'll be back next week, and hopefully he'll join us and give us a few thoughts around practical steps for transformation. Hey, I hope you have a blessed evening. Peace. Take care.